Well, looks like it is 11 o'clock. Welcome everybody to the second of Mayor Archive Collective's Baba Zoom events, which we're going to be having on an ongoing basis monthly. Had a very nice initial Zoom last time with Jean, who's also here today, along with Jeannie Felkner. And today, Heather Mashandaro and Elaine Cox are going to be sharing some information about some of the recent donations to MAC. And just wanted to say hello to everybody. I don't know if everybody here is familiar with Mayor Archive Collective. I recognize many, pardon me, many of your names and faces, but we are renovating an old school building. That's been a long process, and we're getting near to the finish line. Heather, if you could pull up the couple of first images for us, if you don't mind. I think the first one is just an image. Well, we'll get to the image of the building. Mayor Archive Collective's mission, again, for anyone who might not be familiar with it, is to collect, preserve, and share Mayor Baba's divine legacy of material artifacts and words with integrity, love, and transparency for the benefit of humanity. We are all committed to doing everything we can to make sure that nothing gets lost and to contribute to the worldwide effort to preserve aspects of Mayor Baba's advent in images, in film, in documents and letters, to further the world's access to Baba's fragrance after we're all gone. Many people talk about the post-Mandalay era, which we've been in for some time, and a phrase that jumped into my mind a while ago was that we're heading to the post-Mandalay contact era, when all of those of us have been fortunate enough to have contact with the Mandalay also won't be around, and we're going to be more dependent. The world will be more dependent on things that are collected, stories, including all of yours, that are collected for future generations. And there's a quote by Baba of something he said to Mara. I think we can have that on the screen also, Heather. You have no idea what just one scrap of my sadra will mean to the world in the future. This apparently was said to Mara when she asked Baba if it was okay to discard an old and worn sadra that Baba had worn. And this quote will come back a little bit later in our time today to mention its relevance to a particular item that we have. So I would like to just again tell you a little bit about today. We're going to have some time for discussion, questions after each of Elaine and Heather have some time to talk about some individual items. And Elaine is going to go first, going to turn it over shortly to her. Elaine was fortunate enough to spend quite a lot of time in India, had a lot of contact with the Mandalay and Merazad, was around in the early days of the creation of the archive at the Trust, and got a lot of her archival conservator training there, worked very closely with Dot Lesnick, and would go back to India regularly for pilgrimage, and while there, always be involved in working with the preservation of Baba's items. And one of the things that Elaine was fortunate enough to be exposed to was how the women Mandalay cared for Baba's things. Just a very special level of care and reverence to save and preserve things that were connected to their beloved. So Elaine is now working with MAC as our archive specialist and conservator. One of the areas that she focuses on is the rehousing, including box building of things that need boxes for archival preservation and display, as well as the appropriate careful cleaning and preservation of things that come in, that they will be cared for and preserved for for the future. So with that, I'd like to turn over to Elaine. Thank you, Elaine. And Elaine's going to share a number of things with us all today from the Mac collections. Elaine.
Okay. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Scott. This is Elaine Cox speaking. And as he said, my job at MAC is the handling and care and the safe storage of the objects and the treasures connected with Baba's life. And today I want to show you a few recent donations that we've received. Okay, first slide, please. This is a coffney that was worn by Muhammad Must.
Hang on a minute.
Very briefly, let me just go over these slides quickly then. This is myself and Sheila Krinsky at Merazad, where we were temporarily set up, and we were working on Adi K. Irani's collection here in 1989. Next slide. And that's Dot Lesnick and me acting silly. And again, we were at the same table, the other side of the same table in 1989 at Merazad. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a picture of myself working with Franny Foreman, who also lives here in Asheville. And this is in the downtown office that we now work out of. It's on Gulf Street, right in the heart of Asheville, until we get into our big new building. Okay, thank you. Now, next slide. Okay, this coffney was Muhammad Must's coffney. It was donated by Phillip Creager, but it was given to him by Heidi McGovern. And she was a part-time resident at Merazad from 1985 to 2004. Now, during those years, right around 89 into 90, Muhammad was very, very ill. And so ill that they thought he was going to pass on. And one of Heidi's jobs there was to have a shift looking in on Muhammad, just to make sure that he was okay. And she has this charming story about how she received this coffney, and I'd like to read it to you. She tells this story that one day, while she was looking in on him, Muhammad woke up to the apparently very amusing sight of Heidi at her full 5'3", standing there next to another one of the attendants, Bob Payne, who is 6'5" high. Okay, Muhammad thought this was funny and began roaring with laughter. He went on, she says, and could not stop for some time. Now, soon after that event, she recalls that Muhammad began recovering, and she felt that it might have been that laughing that was the turning point that brought him around. We all know that laughter heals. Anyway, sometime after this, Heidi was walking by the veranda where Muhammad sat, and Eric Nadell was there with him. Eric was his longtime caretaker. And so Eric said to him, "Muhammad, why don't you give Heidi one of your coffneys?" Now, Muhammad's response was his usual non-reactive gaze. And so Eric gave him a little nudge and said, "Why don't you give Heidi a coffney?" And so Muhammad gave his assent by hand signal to Erico, who handed her one of his coffneys. And that coffney we have today at the Meher Archives. Now it will be folded gently and padded in every fold. This is to keep the creases, any creases from becoming permanent, because that is where the fabric will break in the long time future. And a box will be made of coroplast to store it in. And I'll talk a little bit more shortly about coroplast. This may end up being one of the pieces that we show in our rotating display. We're planning on having a display room eventually. Okay, next slide. The next thing I want to show you is most unusual and very special. These are close-ups of the coffany. Okay, next slide, please. Ah, there's Muhammad in his coffany. Just look at those eyes. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, most unusual this is and very special. This beautiful blue bottle is 11 inches, 11 1/4 inches tall, and it contains water sponged on beloved Baba's body in 1967 by the Mandali. It was the habit of the women Mandali to save everything, anything and everything having to do with Baba's physical life, anything that touched Baba's body, as we know about the trimming of his hair and his fingernails. Now, this was donated in Dorothy Cassidy's collection by hand of Bob Underwood. And Bob was her designated person to handle her things after her passing, which has happened. And though we found no records by Dorothy, we think maybe that this has been given to her by Peggy and Andy Muir, since other items, quite a few other items in her collection were given by them. However, it's also possible that the Mandali themselves gave this to her in Merazad on her one and only trip to India. Now, for those of you that do not know Dorothy, she lived her entire adult life in her wheelchair. She was a very determined woman. She became a teacher and she had a son. I wasn't in the room at the time, but I was told later that when Dorothy rolled herself into Mandali Hall, the Mandali stood up to greet her and acknowledge her. So it is very likely that they gave her this there at Merazad. Now, a very special box will have to be made for this to protect the glass, obviously, and mostly, very importantly, to make it so that it will never tip over. So it will probably be a box within a box of some sort. Anyway, I'm working on that. And this is a good time to talk about coroplast, just very briefly. Many people don't know what it is by name, but you see it all the time. It is the modern replacement for an old corrugated cardboard box. And this is a piece of coroplast here. It's very lightweight, as you can see. And when it's folded, it's very, very strong. And this is the same material that we use in Mehrabad for building boxes of unusual size and items. If you can see, let's see, up close. Can they see the edge of that in the screen? Yes, there we go. You can see that the thing itself is an extruded plastic sheet and it goes all the way the full length of the sheet. These tiny little I-beams that support it quite evenly all the way across. And when it's folded, that becomes very strong. So enough about coroplast. Oh yes, the most important thing about it is that it does not outgas. It has none of that plastic smell. It's very clean and safe for all artifacts. And the last thing I would like to say, and this is very important, is please record every detail of your own treasures, Baba treasures that you have. Write down everything you know about it, who gave it, and the date, if you have it, and the hands that it has passed through. This provenance is very important. And we hope to come up with some of the provenance on this bottle as an example. So I just wanted to remind you of that. And that's really just about all of this. So I'll turn it over back to you, Scott. And you're muted.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing that, Elaine, and thank you for all of your hard work and dedication and expertise that you bring to MAC. It's a real one of our treasures to be able to do this work with your help. And we had a team of people who were working under Elaine in the past, and we're starting to revive that process. Obviously, it had to take a back seat with COVID and restrictions on people being in small spaces together. But we're hoping to get more people to come in again to help with the voluminous task of inventorying and sorting, as well as the kind of care that Elaine's just talked about. So I'd like to open it up briefly for comments, questions so far regarding anything particularly that Elaine has shared with us. And then after that, we're going to jump back over to Heather, who's going to share some different items with us. And there'll be opportunity at the end of that for also some discussion or questions. So you can raise your physical hand or raise your Zoom chat hand. Farish Day, I see you've got your hand up. Hi, Farish Day.
Hi, Scott. Jay Baba.
Hey, Bob.
Hi, Fareshte.
Hi, Elaine. Jay Baba. Since you were showing some of the items that Dorothy had donated, and I was here at the time of her passing, and we got to be pretty close. So lovely soul indeed. And I was really touched by what you shared about her when she entered Mandali Hall. The Mandali got up in her honor. That was beautiful. I wanted to add to that story, to the end of that story. We understand that from the person who was with her at the time of death and afterwards, after she was taken away, he returned to the house, and he said there was a fragrance of roses that permeated the entire perimeter of the house and the inside of the house that lasted for quite a few days. So I think that I felt called to share this.
Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely.
Thank you, Farish Day.
Yeah. She was a lovely person, for sure.
Roger, is that a physical hand you've got up there? You're muted at the moment. You're still muted, Roger.
Roger is drowning in his ocean.
We can't hear you, Roger. You're muted.
Roger, go to the upper right corner of your
I think I got it.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Woo!
It gave
Hey,
me a
Roger.
warning just as you started to talk.
Okay. Hi, Roger.
Hi, Elaine. So I have a question about your provenance thing, which is quite difficult, especially as a second generation Bob lover. My parents collected an immense number of things, and luckily I was paying attention a lot of the time. And I have a lot of, stories associated with the items.
Right.
My specific question for you guys is, my wife Wanda was given a pillow by Karen St. John, and she says that it was Erich's pillow. Well, I asked my wife, what does that mean? What's the provenance? How do you know it was Erich's pillow? So where would you go if you were in this situation? I obviously can contact Karen St. John and find out what she knows about it. But here, Wanda, my wife pulls out this pillow out of a plastic bag and says, this is Erich's pillow. I need to give it to the MAC. Well, I'm going, well, I think we need a little more. So any suggestions on that kind of thing? Or?
Well, yes, your first idea is correct. Go straight to her. And then you also, there's the women who, and the men, the people who lived at Marazad. Also, you could contact any of them, like Shelley Marish, any of the gals that are still there. And you can ask them, and they can also give you a little feed on anything they would need to see it, of course.
Mm.
So you could do it by Zoom.
Yeah, I guess that's my problem with the whole thing. I mean, we're at the very beginning of a tsunami here of
Yes.
wonderful items that are out there in the world, and we're also right at the edge of the tsunami of how do we verify these
Yeah.
kinds of things. So that was unfortunately my first response to my
Mhm.
wife's bringing this pillow out that I never knew we had. Things like that.
Okay. Yeah, the thing is to just every detail that you have, keep it with the item and then research it as best you can right now with those that are still there that were with the mandali. So
Yeah.
that's all I can think of. Suggest now. Heather has an idea.
Okay.
Yes. So Wanda really needs to write down her story. Nobody can tell that story but Wanda. And you can either contact Karen St. John, or you can leave Mac to contact Karen St. John. So Elaine is absolutely right, but we can also contact her too. And she has given some, she has donated some items as well to the Mac. So we have a working relationship with her.
Yeah, I guess I don't doubt that it was Erich's pillow, because I know Karen very, very well. The thing is, verifying all this kind of stuff is the kind of the tricky part. Second part of that question is, I know people that have Baba treasures that are getting elderly and they're not interested in giving them to the Mac. What do I say? Is there a letter? How do I go about following this? Because person that owns the Sadra has already had open heart surgery, and and they're not. They probably will give it to their kids, and one of their kids is a Baba lover, so it's probably safe. I think I mentioned this to Elaine already once, but
Mhm.
those kinds of things are kind of tricky too, because we're all getting older, and these things are disappearing quickly
Mhm.
into the black hole.
Well, if I could jump in, I think that just speaks to one of the key parts of what MAC is about in terms of our priorities. And our first priority is not to be acquisitive, to say it has to come to MAC.
Right.
We feel a privilege to be able to be in a position to help and a dedication to that process. The most important thing is that things don't get lost. And any conversation with someone who has things is, have you made a clear plan of what you want done with this? And in the case of leaving it to family members, of course, that's fine if that's what someone wants to do. But we're going to touch on this a little bit later, but I mention it now. It's important in that case for the person to have a clear agreement, either in their will or in some other way, with family members, children, etc., on that they're going to be given these items with the understanding that they will care for them in a particular way, and perhaps some future disposition of them, so that there's something in writing, hopefully, that will, as best as we can anticipate, mean that these things will be preserved somewhere.
Yeah.
As far as we're concerned, whether they end up, in the MAC facility, or they end up in the Avatar's abode, or the Indian archive, or any place else, the Trust archive rather. The most important thing is that they're preserved, and also, as we've been saying, the stories are recorded. I mean, I don't know how many pieces of the original cross there are out there, but there are probably a lot more things that are claimed to be part of Jesus's cross than be 100
Exactly.
feet high or something. So we just have to do the best we can to record things.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. Well said.
Just one more quick thing. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be hogging the time, but Elaine, is very good at identifying people in photographs and things like that. And I spent a little bit of time with her and was very impressed by her ability to identify people in photographs. The last thing she said when she was showing the lovely bottle of Dorothy's was about provenance. And even though I've been involved with art and art history my whole life, the idea of the provenance of sacred items is really quite a different show, if you know what I mean. So I think that whole little thing you said about provenance, everything you know about it, everything that you've heard about it, all that's really important when people give a donation, because that's the whole story. My mother has little plastic bags with sticks in them, pieces of wood. I have no idea what they are. I know they were precious. What do I do with them? I have no idea what they are. So I'm just going to save them in a special bag and say, well, this is sacred, but I don't know what it is.
Wow.
That's about all I had to say.
Yeah. Well, that's going to happen a lot, I'm sure. But our job at this point is to track down everything we can. So just do your best. And
Yeah.
Baba will help.
That's true. It's all in his hands
Oh.
anyway.
Perfect.
Yes.
Any other comments, questions that people would like to share?
Great comments, Roger.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Fereshte, thank you.
Show us your slides, Heather.
All
So
right.
we can move on to the next bit of what we're going to share with you. Many of you know Heather Mashandaro from many years in the Baba world. Heather is the MAC's administrative coordinator at the moment and helping us in that capacity, doing a whole variety of things. Some of you have been in touch with her regarding donor agreements and getting things buttoned up. One thing that we've run into is some people would say, well, we just want to give you this. We don't want to bother with the paperwork.
Yeah.
As we've just been talking about, the record and the provenance is, all this is essential, and it's part of really our responsibility of everybody involved. And so Heather has been doing a great job of chasing this kind of information down and making sure that it's part of the record that we need to have. So as many of you know, Heather's grew up in a Baba family and has quite a bit of experience in the Baba community. And in terms of work related to MAC, previously, I think for about 11 years, she worked at the Metropolitan Museum in New York in the Egyptian department. So she has experience on the administrative level of collections, which is also very helpful to us. So Heather's going to share a number of items also that have come to us recently. So over to you, Heather.
Hey, everybody. So glad to be here today and to see so many wonderful friends on this Zoom, including a childhood friend, Sherry. So I'm going to show you a few things from Roger Stevens' collection and from Theus and Rachel Malmberg's Promised Gifts. Now, Roger gave to MAC, and is everybody familiar with the term MAC? MAC means Mayhair Archive Collective. So we just call it MAC all the time because it's a long one to say out. So before I came on board last year, Roger donated his mother and father's Baba treasures and his Bill's large collection of photos to MAC. And recently, Roger just donated his collection to MAC. And if anybody knows of Roger and his parents, they are longtime Baba lovers. They all came to Baba in 1969. Roger, how old were you in 1969?
16.
So he was 16 years old when he came to Baba. And Bill and Peggy Stevens are pretty famous for being longtime Baba lovers that they took over the Miami group from the Forbes, Ann and Ed Forbes, who had met Baba previously. And that Miami group was really their area, their group. So anyway, Roger went to India first, and he went overland to Mehrabad from Europe. He actually hitchhiked overland with Scott O'Neill. And they came to Merazad in Mehrabad in 1973. And I'm gonna start showing my slides here. Give me a second. And this is the first picture in our slideshow. Roger and his father, either Roger or his father took this picture of Mansari. And Mansari was the caretaker of Upper Mehrabad. And Baba ordered her to stay behind when the women Mandali and Baba moved to Merazad. And she was there until her death. And many pilgrims have stories of Mansari and being in her kitchen and chatting with her and having chai. And what I remember of Mansari is that she talked to me about the importance of Baba's name. And she illustrated to me by showing her hand and the digits of her finger, how many times she says Baba's name every day. She actually counted them. So this picture is shortly after Roger was surprised by his parents visiting. Now, Roger, you can jump in here anytime you want. The story goes is that Roger was painting. He arrived in India in October. It was Christmas Eve. And he had spoken with Mansari that morning for a while, kind of missing his parents. It's Christmas Eve, he's a youngster. And Mansari was teasing him. Hey, Roger, you should bring your parents. You should bring your parents to India. And nudging him. Well, Roger goes out to the pandal and sets up painting there. He's painting the Samadhi. And up comes a bus up the hill, very, very unusual. Have a bus load of people come up the hill at that time in 1973. And Roger's father leans his whole body out of the window and says, "Jai Baba, Roger." And Roger can't believe it. And he runs to Mansari. "Mansari, my parents are here. My parents are here." And Mansari says, "Acha," and she slaps his hand. And so this picture is taken shortly after that incident. We don't know, Roger can't remember if it was either his father or if it was himself, but a whole bunch of pictures were taken. And it really does look like Mansari is really happy. And she's a bit mischievous too in this picture. She's making bakri, millet bread. Roger, do you want to say anything about that moment?
Not so much, other than since I had been in India since late October, there was not a lot to do back in the early 70s. You couldn't go to Merazad and visit every day, but you could go to Mehrabad anytime you wanted. And so other young people, there was a lot of, we were staying at the Dalit, which is a famous hotel in Ahmednagar. But we used to ride our bikes. We had a Framji, I remember his name was the Cyclewala. We rented bikes and we'd ride out to Mehrabad nearly every day when we weren't going to Merazad. Well, being in Mehrabad and hanging out at the Samadhi, I didn't really have a lot to do. So I would go up and hang out with Mansari. Ended up being hours, many days in a row, just hanging with Mansari and her telling me stories and her asking about my parents and encouraging me to bring them and all those sorts of things. And one precious thing that she didn't mention, Heather didn't mention, is because I used to hang out and I was kind of a young man, she used to go over to her window where the birds would come and go. And she had this jar with this nasty looking stuff in it. And she would reach in with her right hand and take out 2 fingers of this gooey, I could tell it was jelly-like material. And she put it straight in my mouth. It was the most wonderful thing I think I've ever eaten. And she called it gulkan. And it was made from the roses from the samadhi. Every day she would collect the rose petals and mix them with straight sugar and put it in the windowsill, and it would turn into rose jam. Probably the most wonderful thing I've ever eaten. But that was shortly before this all happened with my dad and mom showing up. So it could have been anything along that line. I do have a bunch more pictures of Mansari. One showing her extraordinary short height compared to mine and my dad's. But these will be upcoming soon. Thank you.
I think we all know this photo. I'm pretty familiar with it, but I never knew that it was taken by Roger Stevens. So this photo is taken on either Christmas Day or New Year's Day, 1974. It was a holiday at Marizad. Pilgrims were coming in to see the Mandalay. Everybody was talking up a storm. Roger saw Mara pretty much alone on the porch, and he grabbed his dad's camera and he asked her, "Mara, can I take a picture of you in the garden?" And she threw up her hands, "Say no more." Yes. And so we finally know who the photographer is of this beautiful picture. I think, Rosalie, I think this is one of your favorite pictures. You've given me this picture before, a copy of it. So wrote
A
Yeah,
close
go.
up of it, you can see the scar on her face from the accident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now this is a scan of the photo. So Roger, do you want to tell the story of the day you were leaving and your precious moment with Mara?
Oh, Baba, that's a hard one. I had been in India for from October until I think it was before Amar Tithi. So I had been there three or 4 months, and my parents offered to pay my way back to the United States because I was getting ready to go on an overland trip back to the United States, and my parents paid for that air ticket back to Nassau, which is very close to Miami. So it was really easy for me to get home. So I was feeling pretty lucky, knowing I didn't have months of horrible travel away from my real home back to Miami. But the week I had to leave, I went to Marizad, and I was pretty much overtaken because I literally had the best time of my life. I'd never felt more loved, more welcomed, more familyness, more excitement, more unusual, and not to mention closer to my beloved Baba than I had been in those months. And so that last day at Marizad, I was just standing in the living room at Marizad and looking forlorn, I think. And Meru came up with Mara and asked what was wrong. And I just burst into tears, I said, "I don't want to leave. I can't stand the thought of leaving." Well, I was 20 at this point, and I didn't know that this kind of thing would make Mara start crying. So here she is right there listening to my story about how I don't want to leave. And here these tears come to her eyes, and she's saying, "No, and I felt dreadful because I'd made Mara cry. It was nothing for me. I knew I had to leave. I had to go back to the States, but here I was crying in Baba's living room, and Mara started weeping, and that freaked me out. So I made a quick exit.
That's a really wonderful story, Roger. Thanks for sharing it. I know that you were a little bit shy about that.
Yeah.
Here's some more photos by Roger. And this color photo might be by Peggy.
Yeah, it could
And
be.
this is Mani at her best, sharing stories with pilgrims in Mandalay Hall, Baba's sister and second closest female disciple. And Baba said she was his spiritual sister as well. Here's another photo of Mani with Rano Gailey. Rano Gailey was Baba's artist in residence, and she lived with Baba until he died, and she lived in India until she died. She did the 10 circles chart. You can see it in Upper Mehrabad near the Samadhi at the museum. And Baba really, she was going to leave her art behind, and Baba really prompted her to keep doing her art. And nice little story here. Roger has the camera, and Mani tells Rano, hey, Rano, Roger's taking a picture. Come, let's look this way. Roger's taking a photo. A sweet little moment. And notice the blue bus in the background, and also the really nice composition of the corner poster, I am the Ancient One. And here is
Yes,
Eric.
Rano I've ever seen. Rano smiling, that was wonderful.
So here's another picture of a series of photos. Eric Jessiwala, Baba's right-hand man, interpreter. He read Baba's alphabet board and then later interpreted his hand signs. He gave so many stories in his book, Is That So? And other books. He was a great storyteller and inspired all the young people, the Westerners and all the Indians. He was really Baba's right-hand man and spokesman for the future generations. And I have a memory, really strong memory of Erich in 1994 at MRT, sitting at the tin shed near Baba's Samadhi, and really just going, hardly sleeping at all. He was on duty for those 3 days. And some of the Western pilgrims were wanting him to rest. And somebody put me in charge of going and telling him, I think you need to rest. And he said, not at all. This is my duty. And he was so strong. He moved his body so strong, just a pillar of strength. So this is Erich telling a spiritual allegory to the pilgrims. He actually had them get off the bus on their way to Ellora Caves, right next to Happy Valley, where Ram and Sita stayed a while in exile. There's a village right next to Happy Valley where they were making sugar from sugarcane juice. And the spiritual allegory is that he really illustrated it by this process of skimming off the impurities. And Baba boils you, once you give yourself to him, Baba boils you in the cauldron of his love. And then he skims off, well, he crushes you first. He makes the sugar cane juice. Then he boils you, and then he skims off the impurities. And that's what makes sugar. And that's what makes you so sweet, by skimming off those impurities. Such a nice little allegory. And you get a show and tell. You get off the bus, and there's Erich gesturing. This is a great photo of Erich gesturing and telling this story, this spiritual allegory.
Heather, I have a great addition, Baba's short quote, don't feel down by what I bring up in you.
Oh, I love it. Love it, Rosalie. And so here's a villager with the sugar, the completed product. Is this sugar or jaggery?
They just called it gul. Gul. So that's just pretty much pure sugar.
Mm-hmm. And here are some of the kids. Now, a lot of these are scans. So when we get our hands on the photos or the negatives, we can create TIFF files and store them for posterity, high resolution photos. Here's Pendu and probably Wanda Stevens. getting some love from Pandu, and I met Pandu a little bit after this date. I met Pandu in 1980, and he wanted, if you were a child and you were one of the children there on pilgrimage, he would just reach his arms out and want to hug and hug you. And he was going by that time. He was super affectionate, super sweet, and big mouth too, I hear. He'll just say what he's thinking. This is Mina Barucha, or Minu Last Life Barucha. Baba said it was his last life, and Erich Jessiwala during Amrit Tithi. And the photographer is Roger's dad. Now, Minu had come to Baba after being quite close to Upasni Maharaj. So after Upasni Maharaj dropped the body, Minu came to Baba. Minu saw Baba first in Nasik, and then after that, he had Upasni's darshan. So Minu was another one of those people who would take the pilgrims to wonderful locations like Sikori and Shirdi. And I remember that trip very well. And he introduced us all to Godavari Mai and to Godavari, and it really made an impression, her big mastiff protecting her. So he would have pilgrims in his home, his little apartment down there in Lower Mehrabad, and give us lots of tea with lots of sugar in it and Shrewsbury cookies, which are the Parsi cookies that come from Pune. Here's another, and 2 photos that Roger took. And this is Gohar on her bicycle. And you could find Gohar riding her bicycle around Merazad and Mehrabad. As a pilgrim, you see her just ride her bicycle by all the time. And Gohar was Dr. Gohar. She was Baba's personal physician. And then when Baba passed, she had a clinic out of a vacant room in Merazad. And that's Alaba. That is Baba's, Alaba came to India when he was 7 years old, and he was in the Prem Ashram, and he was the only living resident from that time to be one of living with Baba. And this is Bal Kalchuri. We all have a lot of shared experiences with Bao, I'm sure. He, of course, wrote Lord Mayhair, and I wonder if he was writing what he was writing this time, Roger. Lord Mayhair, Avatar of the Age, Mayhair Baba Manifesting Everything and Nothing. And I wonder if at this time when you took that picture, what he was working on. Do you know?
Yeah, actually, we had an interesting conversation. I had been there long enough that we were fairly close, and he knew I was an artist and all this, and so we used to talk about his writing. And he was writing mostly ghazals at this point. I believe this is it could be 73 that this 3 or 4 that this photo was taking, but I had been in his office, and he was asking me. Basically, he was asking me if I wanted to be one of the residents, because I had been there long enough and I was getting along with all the other residents so good. And I didn't. I don't know what I was missing, and I may never know what I was missing, but I was kind of ready to get back to my regular life. It seemed like the residents were having a hard time getting through theirs with the mandolin.
Thank you, Roger. And then did anybody go to Pune and visit Sumitra? Rosalie, did you ever do that? You're on mute.
Yes, yes. And I remember Joel saying, embrace Sumitra. And I don't know if I did or not because I never saw an elephant up close. I probably did. I was
Well,
out
it
of,
was Baba's favorite elephant.
yeah.
And he would take, I was looking on my Hair Nazar the other night, and there are many photos of Sumitra actually with different persons.
Yeah. And they had when Sumitra died, they had a special parade for Sumitra.
Oh, wow. So Jal was Baba's brother, and he was his youngest brother, and he would often be the point person, the Pune greeter. So he'd greet many Westerners in Pune. And when I came to India in 1980, he greeted our family. We went with Clive Adams and family, and Clive went and got him and brought him to the Amir Hotel. And we sat out there all night. He was telling his story about Baba and not believing that Baba was God. Baba was just his brother. And Baba decided to show him his divinity by putting a hot coal on his hand. And when that hot coal was in his hand, he couldn't believe it. His flesh was burning, but he didn't feel any pain. And Shireen came in, Baba's mother, and what are you guys doing? And immediately the coal started to burn the hand. He showed us his scar, and as a child, it was all just a kaleidoscope of events. First India, and then Jal, and the story of Baba and the coal. And so that's pretty fortunate to have met Baba's brother. This is a beautiful photo, a very mysterious photo, I think, of Meru. She's smiling, but she knows the hardships. She is one of the women who went through the new life. 1 out of 4 women who joined Baba for the new life. So she was Mera's caretaker. I mean, she worked for Baba and Mera, and then when Baba passed, took care of Mera until she passed. Mera's
niece too.
and Mera's niece, yeah. Franny was her mother, and Franny was Mera's sister.
She was
And
also
so-
in the car accident in Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Michael. So I'm going to change gears now, and we're going to talk about Theus and Rachel Malmberg's promised gifts. Now, I was over at Theus's house speaking with Bob Underwood, who was designated Dorothy Cassidy's executor of her Baba things. And Theus told me that he was also interested in giving his treasures, his Baba treasures, to Mac. And so we did a thorough inventory of his precious Baba pieces, and I'm going to show you a few highlights here. I just want to point your eyes to the photo of Theus with Mani. Now, I felt a kinship with Theus. I met him when I was 10, and he was really good with the children. He would tell incredible Baba stories. He told us all, and we were riveted, and we wanted to know more. He told us the story of the men Mandali walking with Baba in Mehrabad, and there was a bike and a well, and Baba took the bike and threw it in the well. And the men Mandalis wanted to know, why did you do that, Baba? And he said, something had to go. So it was either the bike or it was one of his Mandali. So we were just riveted, and he took us to see Padri. We had tea and with Padri, and then we went over. Padri showed us the table house, and what a spectacular moment. That was Theus's doing. And here are a few wonderful items that he will give Mac. There in that glass box are 2 tomb cloths. One was given to Theus in 1974 and the other to Rachel in 1980 by Mansari. And many of you may have some of these tomb cloths. I have a couple that Mansari gave me. And on top of the glass case is writing that Erich, I have to verify if it's Erich's writing. He told me it was Erich's writing, but I need to ask him again. It was something that Erich handed to him, and on top of the tomb cloths is a very special necklace. We'll look at those here. The river Ganges bathes itself in the blood of the one whose heart has bled for his beloved Lord. The Lord is ever vigilant in those who live in love's lane. Theus tells us that this is a piece of paper that Erich handed to him as he walked by his room. Erich said, "You might like this." So here's the necklace, and the necklace is a really special piece. This was worn by Elizabeth Patterson in 1956. And Baba would often touch the little beads. And one day he asked her to take the whole necklace off. And he held every single little bead. He touched every single little bead. And he played with them. And then he handed the necklace back to Elizabeth and said, "Keep this and have it when I am gone." To remember him. She later gave the necklace to Josephine Malmberg, Theus's mother, and then Theus's mother gave it to Rachel much later. Here's a dabba that Mansari gave to Theus, and she also gave him the items in the dabba. The dabba is a small tin container. That's the name for it in Marathi. So within this container is the most first ashes from the first Duni. Sorry. So it's a very rare bit of ash from that first Duni in 1925. Also entombment earth and sawdust from the ice when Baba was entombed.
And that first Duni was held November 10th, 1925.
Thank you, Rosalie.
Yeah.
Our Baba historian.
Ever after it was the 12th, but that was the 10th.
Okay. Okay, here's a very special item, that little Baba button given to Theus by Gulu. Many pilgrims remember Gulu and Jalu. That is a picture of Gulu with her servant. Now,
that's
is
Jalu,
it Jalu? Okay, I had a feeling because but when I have to ask Theus several times about like getting the real provenance. But this took me 3 times visiting Theus to get the real story. He told it the first time, and then the second time differently. I had to go back and really verify this because it's a spectacular piece. This Baba button, Baba actually wore this button for a couple of years under his shirt. And he gave it to Kekobad, and Kekobad wore that Baba button until he died. And Gulu gave the button to him. They had built up quite a friendship, Gulu and Jalo and Theus. Theus would go visit them every day, have tea, laugh, tell Baba stories. And one day she thought, well, I'm going to give him something. And she gave him Kekobad's pants. She said, here are some fancy pants from India. You must wear them, put them on. And then she said, and here, I have something else, something very special. This is the Baba button that Baba wore. And that was left to Kekobad. And then she was pretty naughty. She said, and don't tell Dolly, because Dolly will snatch it up. So apparently Dolly was really good at preserving Baba's treasures for posterity. Here are 2 Baba buttons that Theus and Rachel were given, probably on their wedding. I need to confirm this. John and Leah Florence gave these Baba buttons to Theus and Rachel. John and Leah Florence picked up a lot of buttons when they came to the last darshan. These are touched by Baba and were given to John and Leah by the Mandali.
I just wanted to say, I asked Leah, I checked up on this, and Leah can't.
Oh, good.
Leah can't remember. She can't remember when she gave it, as far as it being part as their wedding gift or not. She doesn't.
Okay, okay. Well, he said 15 or 20 years ago, they gave us these buttons.
Yeah.
And now this is my last slide. And this really goes back to let me read them out. The wonderful words that Baba tells Mera. You have no idea what just one scrap of my sadra will mean to the world in the future. And indeed, here is one scrap of sadra, of Baba's sadra. This container, the locket, and the scrap of sadra were given to Theus by Mani. Theus was in Marazad and begging, always begging for more of Baba's things. And he said, I would really like something of Baba's. And she teased him. She said, you have so much. You have so many Baba things. Theus actually had a lot more Baba things than what he has now, because he's given many away. But this was a very special gift from Mani. She went to her office after chiding him. She went to her office. Just one moment, I'll be right back. And brought him the heart container, the locket, and the scrap of sadra. And that ends my presentation with of Roger Stevens' collection. We haven't even touched upon that's not even the tip of the iceberg of Roger Stevens' collection and his photos that posterity will enjoy. And Theus Malmberg and Theus and Rachel Malmberg's collection. I'm going to turn it over to you, Scott. And I'm going to stop my share, and and then just let me know when to continue the slideshow.
Okay. Thank you, Heather, for sharing all of that, as well as your personal stories and all your hard work that's gone into this and other things. Again, we've got some time. It's 12 o'clock, and I know that these Zooms are a little flexible on their duration. We don't want to keep people unduly, but we're happy to open the floor to any comments or questions, either about anything that Heather's just shared with us, or other questions you might have about Mac or other things you want to mention. So again, your visual hand or your Zoom hand, if you have anything you want to ask or share. Well, as I mentioned, we're going to be having these on an ongoing basis of different topics on a monthly basis. And Heather, do you have, I don't have the dates in front of me. Do you have, we can share those with people.
Yeah, I'll pull them up, but Fireshta has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that little yellow hand. My mistake. Hi.
Well,
Yes, sir.
you just answered my question, Scott. I was saying how delightful it is to have this Zoom, and I was hoping that it will continue. And this is a marvelous way of sharing the treasures, especially since they're being recorded. So not everybody can make it to Mac to see the treasures, but like this way it will be shared and the world will see it. Thank you so much for all the work you all are doing. Appreciate it.
You have no idea how wonderful it is to do this work. It's a gift to do the work.
Yeah. It is quite an extraordinary thing. I've myself had the opportunity to do a little bit of the hands-on stuff over the time involved with Mac, and you know, if you're rehousing or scanning, the Elaine's clear instructions are you do not have time to read everything, so please don't. But one tends to at least have a glimpse at things, and just to have the physical contact as well as occasionally having a moment to read some things is a very moving. We get a little bob a hit of some kind through that, which is a great boon to the people who are helping. And this project's going to need a lot of help. And one of the many reasons that this project ended up being here in the Asheville area is because of the large and growing Baba community. When I first visited here in 2008, I believe, visited with Peter and Debbie, and they shared with me the local list, and I think it was 2 pages long. And you know, in the intervening years, I don't know what's going on, but Baba has definitely, there's a bit of a magnet of people coming to this area, which is going to be very beneficial for the archiving effort, because the scanning and the rehousing is going to be both a need and an opportunity for people to come and be involved and help. So if any of you are so inclined, please let us know. There will be opportunities in the future for some of this work to be done remotely as well as on site. We're in the midst of moving to create a database. I may have mentioned this maybe last month. We're going to be creating we have records that we are already maintaining, but we're going to be creating a database for both our internal use and for worldwide access to the material. And this is being created in a parallel manner to what's already in place in India and the Trust and Avatar's Abode, and also what will be used in Myrtle Beach. And Seven Macaulay is the main architect of that database, and he's going to be working with us to help create that. So again, the aim of that is that eventually people will not only be able to access things that are in individual archives, but be able to have access to multiple locations. So, if someone's doing some research about Norina, for example, in a particular time, there'll eventually be an opportunity to see, oh, there's this material. This material is in India, this is in Australia, et cetera. So that's part of the longer term thing that we're doing. And the entering of data, once we have things scanned, there's going to be opportunities for people with appropriate training to contribute to this overall effort remotely by entering keywords and things like that. But that's a little bit down the road, but that's some of what's available. And just to let you know, there will be opportunities to participate and to be involved as well as to help out if you feel inclined to do so. So.
So Chris has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I keep not seeing these little hands. I apologize. Chris, please go ahead.
Thank you for this program. It's been delightful to see all these artifacts. I have one provenance item for Heather. You showed that glass cabinet with the 2 tomb cloths, and at the top of that cabinet there was a picture of Theus with Mani, and I think I took that picture.
Oh my goodness.
So if
wow.
you want to,
oh wow.
And also I've got I was in India at the time when Dorothy was there, and I've got a couple of nice pictures of Dorothy if y'all would like to see those. Dorothy with the mandalay. So can you give me permission to share screen?
Yes, I can.
You know how to do that?
Give me a second. I have to. Okay, there we go.
Let's see.
This is good because a lot of people didn't know Dorothy.
I don't know if it's going to work or not. Let's see if that's. Let me try that again. It is,
Are you good to go, Chris?
it doesn't seem to be giving me that option. So if that
I've
does,
definitely here, let me try advanced.
oh, wait a minute. Sure.
Okay, I think I've changed the permissions, so.
Nope, nope, it is not working. So I'll send those pictures to you.
Listen, why don't I just make Chris co-host? I think it will happen then.
Why don't you do that?
Why don't I do that?
That would be nice if we could have a record.
You could go ahead and tell a story about Bill.
There you go.
Ramp for her.
Okay, let's see.
Diana, I allowed multiple participants to share, so
It
how
doesn't
does
seem
it
to
look
be.
on your,
No,
how
it
does it
doesn't seem
look
to
on
be.
your end?
Chris, the share screen button is in the bottom of your Zoom screen.
Yeah, I've been hitting it, but it's not giving me the option to do it. It just tells me to open the system preferences. Okay, so
Okay, well, next time you can share it with the group, and happy if you want to share it with us digitally.
Yes, I'd love to have it, to add it to her collection.
Yeah,
Thank
we'll
you.
do
yeah.
that.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just want to tell you that the next one is going to be on August 20th, and we'll be always announcing these. August 20th and then September 24th.
Great. At the,
And we have a few last slides to show.
mhm.
Scott, should I pull those up now?
Yes, yes, please, Heather, thank you. So this is just a reminder, we've had a bit of conversation about provenance. I always think of a year in Provence or something when I see that word. The first time I ran across it, it was had to kind of figure it out. But as Elaine and Roger and Heather have already mentioned, this is really important. These treasures, if they're not identified as to what they are, where they've come from, and how they came to be in whatever safe archive they end up being in.
Yes.
As Roger said, those pieces of wood, who really knows? There's something special there, and there may be some special something about them that is of benefit to people, but without the story, it's not at all the same thing. So I know I can speak from my own experience, and most people that I talk to says, "Oh yes, I have these various things from India that Mandla gave to me, and they're either displayed in a home altar of some kind, or they're tucked in a nice safe box in the back of your closet." And it's really important to write down what's there and all the story that you can remember about it. And like it or not, our ability to recollect the details of those stories is not going to improve with time. So better to do that sooner rather than later.
The
So
sad truth, yeah.
just a reminder. I see that Rosalie's put her hand up. Do you have a question, Rosalie?
No, I have a contribution. That picture that Roger Stevens took that shows Mara's scar, that's so especially important because Mara used to put some kind of makeup over the scar.
Mhm.
So seeing as Baba told Mara that she shared half the suffering at that accident. And not only that, but he'd always tell people when they say, "Let me share your suffering," Baba says, "No, you couldn't handle it." So
Mhm.
that's very special, that picture. And I think it will be good to note it.
Great. Thank you, Rosalie.
Duly noted. Thank you.
Thank you. And so just as a recap, things we've already mentioned. We wanted to have this here also for just as a visual cue for those who see this as a recording. Just steps to make sure that the things don't get lost. Make a clear list, provenance. As I mentioned earlier, if you're leaving it to family members, make sure there's an agreement to future disposition of what happens, what they will do with them. If you are leaving things to someone or to an archive, it's good to mention this in your will in as much detail as possible. Simply a list of things and where you wish them to go can be added. And obviously the priority is for these precious things not to get lost or overlooked. You know, in my own family, I know in some other people's experience, someone who has Baba treasures who passes away, and those that are taking care of their affairs might not be Baba lovers, might not feel there's an interest in preserving things. So it's important that we take whatever steps we can for the future. And donate your items and stories to a Meher Baba archive of your choosing to ensure the collections and memories are saved and shared for posterity. So that's just a little crib sheet of things that you can do. First and foremost, write down what you've got and where it is, particularly if it's someplace tucked away in your home or wherever you're living. So that's the last thing I wanted to mention. And as we say, it's time to depart. There's a lovely picture by Bill Stevens from Roger's collection. Many of us were fortunate enough to be on the bus when it left and be waved off. In this case, it's Erich and Dr. Goher and Shelley who are there wishing the pilgrims on their journey. So precious memories for those who've had it. And finally, just as a closing slide here, just an informational slide about MAC with a website, an email contact that is a general email, and also a link for donations. This work and everything we've done, both in terms of securing and renovating the building and all of the archiving work that's going on, is been made entirely possible through donations. And we estimate at this point over 10,000 hours of volunteer labor that have been lovingly devoted. Everything from Peter Nordine and Jeannie Felkner, who are donating all their time and out at the building almost every day with overseeing that work there, to people who are helping with archiving, to people who come for things like cleanup and sweeping and all of that. There'll be lots of opportunities for involvement. And we're also totally reliant on Baba, first and foremost, but the financial support from the Baba world is what makes it possible. And we're very, very grateful for that on an ongoing basis. So I just want to say thank you again. Thank you to Elaine and Heather for everything that you share with us, for Roger, for your comments about your material, and everybody else who's been part of this. It's lovely to sort of be in the room with all of you. I think we've kind of gotten used to this is how we interact. Fortunately, there's some movement back towards us being able to be in physical contact with each other, but it's a wonderful opportunity to share a little bit of time in Baba, and nice to have a prequel or a prelude to our day tomorrow for Silence Day. I hope it's a wonderful Babaful day for
Thank you.
all of you.
Likewise.
I think that might be an interesting Zoom for someone to do, is for people to tell their Silence Day stories on some day other than Silence Day. I know for me and for many people, there's always something that's interesting, challenging, hilarious that seems to crop up on the 10th of July. So I think that might be a very interesting and might be a great thing for us to share with each other all at some point. So
Yep.
Anyway, thank you all, and lovely to see you and have your presence here, and look forward to seeing you here next time on the 20th of August.
Scott, I wanted to add one thing.
Yes,
I think it's very good to have these meetings because you'll never know what you'll glean from people who come to these meetings. And, you know, you'll never know what'll show up.
right.
So it's important because we've all had so much contact and things that were precious to us that we just didn't know, you know. I
Yeah.
mean, we knew, but we didn't know we'd be sharing them.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you for that, Rosalie. Yes, and
Yeah.
it's a great opportunity to flesh out details as
Yeah,
people.
yeah, and not just details. Yeah, you just don't know what'll come up.
Right, that's right.
Baba's manifesting.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Like Chris Barker sharing that was his photo of Theus and Mani. I mean,
All right. Well, Jai Baba to you all. Thank you again, and look forward to seeing you next time.
Yes.
okay. Jai Baba all.
Bye,
Baba.
everybody.
Hey, Bob.
Baba.
Hey, Bob.
Dave, have a-
Okay.